Hello, friends. It is Melissa Ramos, and I haven't done one of these in forever, doing a YouTube live, but stay tuned because I'm going to be doing them more often, and I wanted to open this up a little early, just while people kind of come in and, to view this. But I want to be able to let those of you guys who are joining in right now is that you can expect to see more live streams here on YouTube. I release a video, and I'm going to be releasing a video every other week on YouTube. I have been producing a lot of videos behind the scenes. So new, beautiful, polished videos are going to be up every other week. And then in between those weeks, you're going to get a live stream where we're going to be talking about the subject matter from the week prior, because unfortunately, I can't possibly go through all the info that I want to go through in a 4-minute video. Like, I literally probably would just be producing like an hour-long video, and that's not going to happen. So I figure, why not just do a live stream, talk about it, so that you and I can get better acquainted, and I can get to know some of my followers here on YouTube. I know some people are migrating over from different social channels. So feel free to say hello. I know Ron says, "You go, girl." Awesome. And I'm going to go. So today we are going to be talking about a really important topic to me that is near and dear to my heart, and that is the thyroid. As you guys know, I have Hashimoto's, an autoimmune thyroid condition. I'm always sharing latest and greatest updates about my thyroid journey and things that I have learned about it. So, hey Tay, how's it going? So today in particular, we're going to be focusing on the video that I had recently published on YouTube. If you have not seen it when you're done watching this live stream, I highly suggest that you go check it out, because I talked all about the leaky gut connection with the thyroid. And it is one that it's really important for you to understand, especially if you have thyroid issues, because when you have a thyroid condition, to give you an understanding, 97% of women, or individuals, I should say, that have hypothyroidism have a leaky gut. And I should say have a leaky gut, have Hashimoto's. And Hashimoto's is an autoimmune thyroid condition where there is a leaky gut present. So a lot of people will ask me, especially on Instagram, where I tend to have the most interaction and where I tend to be the most active, truthfully, people will say to me, well, Melissa, what supplement can I take for my thyroid? And I always say to them, like, it just doesn't work that way. You don't take a supplement for your thyroid. You really want to, or for any hormonal condition for that fact, you really want to be able to address what is causing the hormonal condition to happen to begin with. Now, I, believe it or not, do not believe in one root cause. And the reason why that I don't is because I feel that the term is very misleading. I think that when we say that there's one root cause, it almost makes someone believe that there's this one magic bullet that's going to solve it. And truthfully, I don't believe that there's one root cause with a lot of hormonal conditions, specifically even the thyroid. So this talk that I'm doing right now with you guys, while I am saying that there is not one root cause, and why I am going to be talking about the gut, it's not just the gut that threw the thyroid out of whack. And so I'm going to be, over the next couple of months, I'm going to be dripping out some videos, more videos about the thyroid. But I would strongly suggest to you that if you have not joined and grabbed a spot to my thyroid masterclass, I'd highly suggest it. That came up super weird. I'm just going to repost that right now. If you have not signed up for my thyroid masterclass, I would highly suggest it. And the reason why is because there is so much information that is in that masterclass that is even beyond what I'm going to be talking about today. But today specifically, I'm going to talk about the connection with the gut. So chemicals cause thyroid issues in coffee or other foods. So the thing to understand is it's not just the gut. There are many other factors, but I'm going to stay on topic today, talk about the gut. And I want to be able to talk to you guys about some things that you can do in your own thyroid healing, and some of the things that I do talk about in my membership, Sexy Lady Balls. Lady Balls referring to your ovaries, which is how the membership started. And then it evolved to so much more. And believe it or not, a lot of people who have thyroid issues also have estrogen dominance issues. So for myself in particular, I have fibroids. And in my past, I had ovarian cysts, like a lot of women struggle with. And the reason why that we end up seeing this as something very common is because high levels of estrogen will end up impeding the conversion of T4 to the active thyroid hormone T3. And so we'll often see women who have polycystic ovarian syndrome. And if you do have fibroids, PCOS, and you have thyroid issues, please comment below and let me know, because I'd love to be able to hear from you. It is really, really common. And, truthfully, every hormone, virtually every hormone, I don't say every hormone, but virtually every hormone is produced, inhibited, and secreted in the gut. So when we think about like estrogen, for example, a lot of it is produced in the ovaries, but it's not just in the ovaries. It's also in the gut. Progesterone is also produced in the gut, alongside of, the ovaries helping to produce progesterone. Your gut also helps to produce many, many, many other hormones out there. So it isn't just in the glands, it's also in the gut. And it's the reason why the gut is so important for us to make sure that we're, having a healthy, happy gut. So you can take all the supplements you want, but if you're eating really poor quality foods, you're really going to struggle hormonally. Because even though we take in exogenous toxins, so when I say exogenous, they're outside the body. So car fumes, mold, etc. Hey, Anissa. We also can actually produce toxins endogenously, so within the body. And a lot of those toxins that are produced endogenously can be produced within the gut. And truthfully, there is a lot of things that can, impair the gut from early on. So if you are somebody who has been on a round of antibiotics, I will tell you that there's going to be some gut damage that's going to that has happened to you. If you are somebody who, had a very big past of drug use, a lot of drinking, that definitely was my past. There's going to be some damage in the gut. Now, I'm not saying it's completely irreversible, but there's going to be this, clawing your way out of that. And I feel that a lot of the hormonal issues that I have personally had was because of my lifestyle previously, where it was very high drug use, very high alcohol use, lots of cigarette smoke. And that's obviously going to impair a lot of the functions in my body, including not just my hormones, but also my gut. And a lot of people will think that, oh, well, I poop once a day, or I poop twice a day, so my gut's healthy, and my poops are well formed, my gut is healthy. And that's not necessarily the case. And so I say that because I think that there's this misconception that, if you are just pooping on a normal, that your gut is healthy. Now, we do know that, especially with yes, fasting definitely does help. It doesn't necessarily, to say that it helps to reset your hormones is false. So that would almost be saying that, like, if you fast, your hormones will be completely reset. That's not necessarily the case. There's a lot of benefits to fasting. It helps to lower the inflammatory response as well. But it absolutely is not necessarily going to reset the hormones. That's a really strong statement to make. I was on antibiotics for 10 days and I ended up getting really sick and I feel so weak. Yeah, because you want to really make sure that you are strengthening the gut with probiotics. There's a lot of probiotics that I do like. The one that I am really digging right now, I'll just put it down here, is called Megaspore Biotic, and you can get that. I'm just going to put some links down here, so hopefully you guys are okay with that. And they're actually a really great supplement. So that's the probiotic that I'm taking right now. You can take it with or without food. It's totally fine. And I generally take about one, like right now I'm taking about 2 a day. It's really important to be able to reinoculate the gut with good bacteria. Now, with that said, if you are consuming really poor, denatured foods, you're going to be continually adding to the stress of the gut. Now, also, the thing to understand is the other thing that really impacts your gut is stress. So, when we hear about gut function, we think about probiotics, we think about eating good quality foods. But, I think the one thing that most people are not considering is the level of stress the role that stress plays on your gut's function. And I say that because of the fact that a lot of people, a lot of women that I work with in Sexy Lady Balls, which is my hormone membership program, for those of you guys who are just tuning in, will come in, and this is really not a judgment call. It's just what I see. But a lot of women will come in who let their emotions rule them. They are highly reactive. They emotionally eat. And I realize that I'm generalizing here because not everyone who comes into the membership is like that. But being in this state where your emotions are completely ruling your world, your gut is going to be impacted because stress actually changes the gut's microbiome. And the microbiome is a world of bacteria. So when you hear that phrase, that's essentially what I am referring to. I do think that probiotics for, what do you think about the Food Babes new probiotic? Worth it or not? I have never actually seen it. So the thing to also understand is with probiotics, when people come out with new probiotics, the reason why that I like the Megaspore Biotics is because they actually actively do a lot of clinical trials on their probiotics. So they're not just a probiotic that has been private labeled, like Food Babe. She would have private labeled her probiotic. So they've actually done cases, clinical trials on their probiotic. So they're very heavily invested in research, which a lot of people don't do. So it's, again, going back to the stress portion of it, if you are not creating proper boundaries, and I know a lot of people like roll their eyes and just kind of don't take this for face value, but it is such a heavily regarded topic that we talk about in Sexy Lady Balls because women truthfully are not doing a great job at self-parenting. You'll have this time when you wake up that you must wake up because you know how long it takes to shower and how quickly you have to get out the door, get on the transit, or get in your car to go to work. Like, everything is timed out. But at night, it's a totally different story because if you are not sleeping and you are sleep deprived, I will tell you right now that you are really, really your immune system is going to take a hit. Now, the thing of it to understand is that the majority of your immune system is located in your gut. So if your gut is off, you're going to find that your immune system is going to go completely AWOL. And if you're someone like myself who has Hashimoto's, when your immune system completely goes AWOL, you feel it. So you'll either get sick, or maybe you'll get eczema all of a sudden that will randomly appear. Maybe your allergies will go AWOL. These are all things that can happen as a result of this histamine response that just goes completely nuts because your gut is just disturbed because you're stressed out. That's impacting your immune system. Your immune system's also located in your gut. So I tell this to women because women will say to me, like, Melissa, I'm waking up, I have a puffy face when I wake up. My eyes are like swollen shut. And I say to them, what time are you going to bed? And if you are not going to bed, and I know that this sounds so rudimentary, but sleep deprivation is one of the few things, sleep is one of the few things in life that are free. And the majority of women I work with really suck at going to bed at a decent time. And so the question remains is, well, what's a decent time? Well, I always say that people say before 11 o'clock. In my opinion, I believe that women should be fast asleep by 10:30, which means that your head should hit the pillow by about 10, which means that you should be off all electronics latest by 8:30. And honestly, I call women out when I work with them. In my membership, when I wake up in the morning and I meditate twice a day. And in the morning, when I have my scheduled time, when I check into social media, which we're going to talk about and how that actually affects the gut as well, and why that actually affects your thyroid, I'll check in and I will see the timestamps of when women actually have posted. And I give them shit, I call them out on it. Because you can't expect to fix your hormones if you are not doing the lifestyle factors that are actually impacting your entire body, including your gut. It's so important for you to understand that this does affect your gut. It isn't just what you eat. It is also about how you are showing up into the world every single day. And you have to take radical responsibility for that. So I'm not going to get into tips on weight loss for breastfeeding because that's not what the topic is for this call. The topic of this call, just for a friendly reminder for those of you guys who are joining in, is the topic is the thyroid and gut connection. So We talked a little bit about sleep. We talked a little bit about, your lifestyle impacts on that. Let's talk a little bit about these devices and the fact that I'm also here on a device with you guys. So one of the things that I will say to you right now is that these devices all emit something called electromagnetic frequency. Now, you might roll your eyes and think that this is crazy, but one of the best ways to avoid electromagnetic frequency is to reduce your consumption of it. Yes, there are sleeves and cases and even clothing, like all different kinds of things that you can do to avoid electromagnetic frequency, also known as EMF. But avoiding and reducing your exposure is really important. So, for example, I'm just going to show you right here. You're going to see that I don't have my Wi-Fi on. I don't have my data on. So if somebody needs to call me because it's an emergency, they can get a hold of me. But I don't want to have this on all the time. And the reason why is because, for example, when people are texting, think about where the actual, they're not doing this. They're like, sometimes they might be, but most times the phone is down here. It has, if you have not read a tinfoil's guide to tinfoil's guide to, I should know it. It's Nick Pinault's book. Anyways, it's talking all about EMF, but he essentially says how electromagnetic frequency alters the gut. It also can alter thyroid function as well. When you see people with their phone to their ear, that is affecting your thyroid. So you have to be super, super careful with that as well. So be really, really, really mindful with that, with your exposure, because these devices raise something called cortisol. Now, cortisol is the hormone released in response to stress. And how does this matter with the gut? Well, if your cortisol levels are completely out of whack, it's going to affect and alter your gut's microbiome. So remember, gut health really reigns supreme when it comes to thyroid health. And as mentioned, Anissa, stickers and sleeves, they might help a bit, but truthfully, believe it or not, even like cases, and I'm not saying this is an EMF case, but cases can actually increase the EMF from coming from these devices. I believe that the stat was 70%, which is pretty crazy. So I always make sure that my Wi-Fi is off, my data is off. If, the door guy has to buzz, the bottom door for a delivery or something, I can buzz them in because they can call. Otherwise, I always make sure that my time on my devices is limited. Now, with all that said, so those are EMFs. We talked a little bit about sleep and lifestyle. And I like to open up with this because oftentimes I will close with talking about these factors, because people really do want to hear about what food do I eat and what supplements do I take. And while I am going to go through that, I still think it was really important to open with some of the things that you absolutely have control of. But you got to take radical responsibility for yourselves, guys. Your thyroid and my thyroid did not go off because we led these perfect lives. And it's the truth. I ran myself into the ground, building a business from a $20,000 deficit. I was pulling all-nighters a lot of the times. I was working 16-hour days. So I shot my adrenals, which is not the purpose of this call. But I can tell you that absolutely, that cortisol and that out-of-whack cortisol absolutely did affect my microbiome as well. So with all that said, let's talk a little bit about co-infections. There are multitudes of co-infections in the gut that are definitely common with people who have thyroid issues. And so one of the very, very common co-infection is H. pylori. So H. pylori is also known as Helicobacter pylori, and it is a gut co-infection that 2/3 of the world's population actually has. Now, I do talk about this in my thyroid masterclass. So if you have not signed up to grab your spot for that, I will post the link again here just to make sure that you guys have that. Really important for you guys to check out, because I talk about heavy metals in that masterclass. I talk about adrenals more in that masterclass. I talk more about supplements in that masterclass. So I would highly suggest for you to check it out. But H. pylori is a really big one. And in fact, not even just with thyroid issues, I see it with a lot of women. Now, a lot of people will be like, well, how do I know if I have H. pylori? Great question. So H. pylori, I want to give you an example because this is a really great example. I had a woman in private practice who actually was a member or is actually still a member in Sexy Lady Balls, my hormone membership program. And she went to her doctor and she got the H. pylori test done. And I told her, listen, it's not that accurate. We do offer testing as an upgrade in Sexy Lady Balls. And one of the testing that we offer as an upgrade is stool testing. And with women who have thyroid issues, I always say to them, you got to get stool testing. And the reason why that I believe that our stool test is so absolutely really does reign supreme is because it's done through something called PCR DNA sequencing. And it's so finite in terms of what it picks up that it doesn't just tell you if you have H. pylori. Like it'll tell you a whack of other things like, do you have parasites? Are there worms? What kind of bacteria do you have? Are there any potential autoimmune triggers? What's your inflammation like? I can tell if you ate gluten. I can tell you what your immune function's like, and on and on and on it goes. It's pretty comprehensive. But one of the things is H. pylori. But it doesn't just test whether you are positive or negative with H. pylori. It will test your virulence factors for H. pylori. So what do those mean? Well, the more virulence factors that you have, the more, virulent your H. pylori is. So in this woman's case, she still went to her medical doctor, got the H. pylori test, didn't tell me she did this, but she did it anyways. And she also did our stool test. And this is where it gets interesting. So we get her stool test back, and, I see her in practice, and she says, I'm surprised because the H. pylori test that we did tested her positive for it, but she lit up like a Christmas tree. She had like almost, to this day, probably more virulence factors for H. pylori than I have ever seen in anybody ever. And so, funny thing was, when she got the test with her medical doctor for H. pylori, it came back negative. And her doctor was perplexed because they don't offer this test. So this test is something that you'd obviously pay out of pocket for, but it is such a common co-infection. 2/3 of the world's population has it, and newsflash, it's contagious via saliva. So if you have it, chances are your partner has it. So the discovery that I had made in my own journey with Hashimoto's was that I had discovered that I had H. pylori. And that was a really big discovery for me because I was like, oh, wow, well, that makes a lot of sense in so many different ways. And so let me explain to you why that made so much sense and why that provided a huge aha for me. Well, number one, when you have H. pylori, you don't have, like, your stomach acid just goes, like, it's like flattened out, okay? Completely flattened out. And when you don't have enough stomach acid, you're really going to struggle at assimilating nutrients from your food. So number one, you're going to struggle with liberating iron from your food in a really big way. So a lot of women who have thyroid issues, especially Hashimoto's, will have anemia. And I will say to them, they'll say, well, I'm taking iron supplementation. I'm like, that can help symptomatically. But then the question is, why do you have the iron deficiency? And there's many reasons why women have iron deficiency, but one of them is a lack of stomach acid. So then some women will say, well, yeah, so as Ron says, apple cider vinegar helps. Sure, but you're not going to take apple cider vinegar for someone who has H. pylori. Because if you have H. pylori and you're taking apple cider vinegar and that person has a peptic ulcer, because H. pylori is a bacteria that can create ulcers, peptic ulcers, that apple cider vinegar or that HCl supplement in your digestive enzyme could actually be making it worse. So you don't want to take that. You want to understand, do I have this bacteria? And if you do, then you have to go ahead and eradicate it. And these are all things that I work with women on doing in Sexy Lady Balls. I will post the link for that just in case anybody wants to understand or is tuning in. They're like, what the hell is Sexy Lady Balls? Or you want to find out some more information. I'll just post the link there for you. Athena says, my doctor just told me I didn't need the test because if I had H. pylori, it would have made a hole in my stomach already. That's not true. That's not true at all. There's a lot of people who have H. pylori and they're asymptomatic. That is not true. I had H. pylori and I was completely asymptomatic. I didn't have acid reflux. I didn't have pain when my stomach was empty. I didn't have any of those symptoms of a peptic ulcer at all. So that is not true. A lot of people, most people are asymptomatic and are living with that. The other thing is you're not able to, as I said, iron was one of the nutrients that you might struggle with liberating. And iron is needed, believe it or not, for the conversion of thyroid hormones. So a lot of women will say to me like, yeah, I'm low in iron, and I'm like, surprise, surprise, they've got thyroid issues. But then the answer is not to take more iron, and it's not to take necessarily digestive enzymes, and it's not just necessarily to take slippery elm bark either. And I'm not trying to be hard on you, Ron, but the reason why that I'm saying this is because that is all asymptomatic. The question is why? Why are these things happening? Because that's what you want to investigate, right? And that's one of the things that I cover in my masterclass. So if you guys haven't grabbed a spot yet, please do so. And it is something that we absolutely investigate even in Sexy Lady Balls. And it's the reason why that we offer upgrades to testing. So, you know, when we look at H. pylori, what are some other things that it can really mess up with? We talked about assimilation of nutrients, iron being one of them. The other one is magnesium. Magnesium is another really big one. So you need stomach acid to liberate a lot of nutrients, minerals, vitamins, B12, protein. So a lot of people that I work with will say, well, you know, I can't have, you know, meat because every single time that I eat meat, I feel like really bloated. I don't feel good. And I'm like, okay, so the question is likely because there's low stomach acid. Now, again, there's other reasons why you could have low stomach acid. It's not always just because of H. pylori. You could have low stomach acid because you're really stressed out, because you're eating on the go. All these things reduce stomach acid in a really big way. So that is something that I always say to people that, you know, it's not necessarily always because of H. pylori, but it's something that I always want to rule out. Another really big co-infection that is very common in women who have Hashimoto's is Yersinia, which is another bacteria that can be in the gut. And so we want to be able to understand what is going on. Are there any gut co-infections that are happening? Because when we end up seeing that the gut is compromised, which is something that I wanted to be able to investigate for myself, was a really big thing. And I ran the stool test that we offer as an upgrade in Sexy Lady Balls. I've run the stool test, and people will say, well, how often do you run it? And I generally run it about every 6 months or so, because I want to see what's going on in my gut. And sometimes when you clear things out, sometimes it can make way on a retest for new things to show up. Because remember, stool is not a smoothie. It is not homogenized. So, you know, when you're doing a stool test, you're trying to pick your poop from different parts of your poop to try to get like a good variety of stuff that's going on. But sometimes, you know, when you eradicate something, because there's all these grooves and areas in the in the large intestine, sometimes things can show up when you eradicate other issues. Another thing that tends to travel very often with H. pylori is something called blastocystis ominis. And that one's pretty nasty because it's a parasite that loves to gobble up on iron. Like, that is an iron sucker if I've ever seen one. It can be very stubborn, so it can perpetuate in the gut for quite some time. So sometimes when I see H. pylori, I'll see blasto on a retest. I call it blasto for short, but it's called blastocystis ominis. But I can sometimes see it on a retest. But I just think it's absolutely crucial. So that's a little bit about testing and a little bit about gut co-infections. Now let's talk a little bit about food. Okay, so food's very important. Now, the biggest things that I spoke about in my last YouTube video, that if you haven't seen it, I would highly suggest for you to watch it, is the importance of making sure that you remove gluten and dairy. And the reason why, unless you are completely okay with dairy, and even if you are completely okay, like you've been tested with, like, say, a Cyrex Array 10 panel, which is a food intolerance panel that's done through blood. You can get that from a functional medical doctor. Even if you've been tested positive for, like, you know, I'm okay to have like yogurt, for example. Have it as a treat once in a while, but it's not something that should be like an everyday occurrence 30 days out of the month. And there's several reasons for that. But before we get there, on a whole, you should not be eating gluten and dairy. And here's the reason why. So in my last video on YouTube, I would highly suggest that you check it out. It's like 4 minutes long. I talked a lot about molecular mimicry. So what happens with molecular mimicry is that the immune system, our immune systems aren't perfect. Okay, so it can get a bit confused, and it may look at, okay, the gluten, you got dairy, and then you've got the thyroid gland. And so when we look at these 3 different things, they have similar protein sequences. And because they have similar protein sequences, the immune system can get confused and go, I don't really know which one to attack, because these foreign foods are like essentially irritating the small intestine of the, it's irritating the small intestine. It flattens out the microvilli. And when it flattens out the microvilli, the small intestine becomes permeable. And that's when food and toxins can actually go through this intestinal barrier and really cause havoc. And that's where the immune system's like, wait, what am I supposed to attack? Is it the gluten? Is it the dairy? Or is it the thyroid? I mean, they all kind of have similar protein sequences. So I always say, as a rule of thumb, if you have thyroid issues, I have women who are like, so I should never have gluten ever again. I should never have dairy ever again. I'm like, as my non-negotiable for food, it's like, I will not eat dairy. I wouldn't be surprised if I was celiac, but I don't want to test for celiac because you have to be eating gluten to test for it. So for me, I'm like, I just remove it out completely. Now, here's another thing to understand about dairy that's very important, is that from a mineral perspective, and I'm not going to get too much into minerals on this call, but minerals is a very, very big topic when it comes to thyroid health. And I talk about minerals in my thyroid webinar. I posted that link there. So guys, so make sure you grab your spot. But I talk about minerals quite a bit. And with thyroid health, usually what we're going to see is calcium levels are actually quite high. It's also called a calcium shell. So calcium levels are high, potassium levels tend to be very low. This isn't a good thing. And this is one of the reasons why you don't want to if you are okay eating dairy, like you've been tested, you're fine about it. Even something like Kim asks here, a great question, what about goat milk and cheese? Goat milk and cheese are a different type. Their molecular size is very different. They have a smaller molecular size. However, from even just a mineral perspective, they're still incredibly high in calcium. And as I just mentioned, with thyroid issues, calcium tends to be out of whack. It tends to be a little bit high, and potassium levels tend to be quite low. So we don't want to be continually feeding that calcium shell. And it's the reason why that I suggest that even if you're okay with goat products, which is the lesser of the 2 evils between like cow and goat milk, I've been tested for food intolerances, and I'm somebody who lit up like a Christmas tree when it came to food intolerances. I'm intolerant to a lot of different foods. They're producing a lot of inflammation in my system, which I'm going to get to in a second about that. But when I looked at that and I saw, wow, okay, so I could potentially eat yogurt because I tested okay for it. And I tested it out. I had some. I felt okay, but I don't want to overdo it because I don't want to drive that calcium shell up any further. That's going to continually disrupt my thyroid. And goat milk and cheese would be no different as well. So I'd be very, very, very careful with the consumption of it, because you don't want to continually build that calcium shell, which is going to disrupt the thyroid gland as well. So I also would look at, if you cannot afford to get a Cyrex, it's called Cyrex panel or Cyrex array. 10 is the panel, because they have like Cyrex array 4, but the one that I got was Cyrex array 10, and it was like, I think their biggest test, and it's very expensive. I'm glad that I got it done. And the one thing that I did, so I tested my food sensitivity before I went to Asia. I was in Asia at the end of May. I probably got the Cyrex done probably about a week or 2 prior to that going. And I probably won't retest it again, Kim, until like next year in May. So probably a year from then. And here's the reason why. So my biggest thing is stool testing is absolutely vital. And like I said, we offer it as an upgrade in Sexy Lady Balls. The link is there if you guys want to check out more about it. But, and you don't have to like get it right away. You can get it after you join. It's not really a big deal. But the one thing that I saw when I got my stool tested was my secretory IgA was low. What does that mean? That means my immune function was really low. And with autoimmunity, your immune system can go high, you can go low, like it's kind of like all over the map. And mine was really low. So when your secretory IgA is really low and you do a food intolerance panel, it's not entirely accurate. Now, hear me out on this. I say that because it's not to say that, like, for me, when I said I lit up like a Christmas tree and I was intolerant to all these different foods, I'm still avoiding all those foods that I'm intolerant to for probably about a year. And then I'm going to go back and I'm going to test some of them. But the reason why that I say that it's not entirely accurate is because since my immune response was so low, my body is going to start to react to a bunch of foods. So are they true intolerances? Probably not. Is my body reacting to those foods? 1,000%. So what I mean by all this is that I believe a lot of those foods that I tested intolerant to will probably go away the more that I work on my gut. Okay? Some of those things will probably stay and a lot of them will probably go. And that's great news. And that's the reason why that I'm like, why would I retest it soon? I probably would give myself a good year, work on my gut, go back and retest it. And it's important to understand to retest even your thyroid, like understanding like if you have a thyroid issue, one of the things that we do in Sexy Lady Balls is we tell people like, hey, here is the blood work that you should be getting. And if you are struggling with getting answers from your medical doctor, if you're in the United States, there are private labs that you can go to. You're going to have to pay out of pocket for it. Now, if you're Canadian, for example, a lot of Canadians sometimes are difficult to work with in the sense that they're not used to necessarily paying for their health care. At least they pay for it in their taxes, but not like, I go to the doctor, I got to pay my doctor for a visit. Americans, you guys pay for pretty much everything. But there are resources to be able to get full thyroid workups done. And it's important because right now with a lot of the insurance cuts that are being done, doctors really are only testing, TSH, maybe T4. This is not enough to understand what your thyroid is at. You got to look at those antibodies as well. You got to look at the reverse T3. I got to look at the entire blood panel, truthfully. And that's really important to look at. So Athena says, do you go over our current labs with us if we join Sexy Lady Balls? So here's the thing. With Sexy Lady Balls, I have an online clinic. So I'll just help you understand how that functions. I have an online clinic. We have 4 practitioners, 4 functional practitioners. All of them are functional nutritionists. One of them is a homeopathic doctor. One of them, has background in Chinese medicine as well. So like they're really smart cookies. Let's just say that. So if you had current blood work, your blood work is only valid for like 3 to 6 months. Otherwise, we tell you to go get new blood work because your body changes so frequently. For me to get I'm going to get all my blood work done. I'm going to get a whole whack of testing redone at the end of this month because it's important for me to understand where I'm at. So if you had lab work that was done within the last 3 to 6 months, we absolutely can review it. One of my practitioners can review it. You can either pay for the consult for them to review the blood work. And what we do, which is very different than what anybody else does, is we actually compile a report. So you give us your blood work, and when you give us your blood work, we actually say to you, here's the blood work that you should get. Because chances are the blood work that you're going to get done, unless you're getting it done from like an alternative care practitioner, is probably not going to be as complete as it needs to be. And that's the reason why that we give you like a list of things that you should actually get. Otherwise, you're going to get you're going to get probably like the bare minimum. Because again, there's a lot of insurance cuts that are happening throughout Canada and the States, even in Europe. So that's something. So you absolutely can pay for someone to review your blood work. But what happens is when you give us your results, we compile a report. And this is where it gets really interesting because I can actually do an entire YouTube call on blood chemistry analysis, because the way that your doctor reads your blood work is from a lab range perspective, which are very broad ranges, versus we read them from a functional perspective, which are more narrow ranges and the ranges that you actually are required to function in. And that's a really big thing. And we also put down specific patterns that could be happening, because people message me with their individual markers all the time, like, oh, my TSH is this number, or my antibody was this number. Like, what does that mean? I'm like, fuck if I know. I don't know what the rest of your blood work looks like. Like, we look for patterns. And in that blood chemistry analysis, that's how we actually review all of that, is we look at patterns. Like, we look at what's your iron like? What is your lipid panel like? Because that matters for for the thyroid picture as well. Like, we look at your white blood cells. There's certain markers that we look at. So it isn't just that. It really is the whole case. Plus, it's not the paper, it's the patient. Like, paper is just paper. Yeah, there's some results on that, but medical history, family history, all that stuff. So it would require a consult 1,000%, which again, they're upgrades, but that's how Sexy Lady Balls functions. Is it's the base membership, and then there are the options to upgrade to get testing, consults, etc. And people do. They have us read their blood work all the time. You also can add on a blood chemistry session. If you say, for example, if you got a stool test with us, you can add on your blood chemistry so that they could read and compile that report. You have a report afterwards to take with you. So you have both that are read in one consult, and that actually probably would be more cost effective, if anything. But the gut is absolutely crucial. Look, if you were like, I can't afford to do a food intolerance panel, that costs like $1,000, because they're not cheap. You always can try to figure food intolerances out by doing some process of elimination. So, for example, take out dairy, take out gluten for a period of 14 days. Okay? Take them out. I would even say go as far as taking out eggs too. Eggs is a big one for a lot of people who have thyroid issues. Now, eggs for me were in the yellow foods, because there's green light, yellow light, red light foods. Eggs for me was in the yellow. So I do eat eggs, but moderately. I don't want to overkill it because I don't want to be intolerant to them. So you take them out for 14 days, and then you test one specific food, like, say, for example, and I wouldn't even suggest testing out gluten really, because it shouldn't be a part of your world if you've got thyroid issues. But test out dairy. So you can have like a little bit of yogurt away from food for 3 to 4 days, because it takes multiple times consuming the food for you to actually potentially see a symptom. So food intolerances are not like allergies. Allergies is stimulating a different antibody in the body where it's producing an immediate response. It's an antibody called IgE. Versus a food intolerance could be promoting a delayed response 3 to 4 days later. And it's the reason why it's really hard for a lot of people to understand, well, what exactly did affect me? So eggs is a really big one for a lot of people. I certainly would look at eggs for you guys. I would look at dairy for sure. Corn, soy is not something I think that people should be consuming just in general. Soy especially can be very goitrogenic, which means that it can inhibit thyroid function. So you want to be really careful with that. And also if you've got something like an autoimmune condition like Hashimoto's or even Graves', you really want to consider going grain-free. Grain-free is very important because grains can have lectins in them, or they have lectins, I should say. Nuts, seeds, legumes, they all have lectins in them. And these can be quite detrimental for the gut. So I would highly suggest to remove those types of foods and really concentrate at least on a lectin-free diet where, you're going grain-free. You're getting in your vegetables, you're eating your proteins, you're making sure that you're getting your fats. You're not just having like chicken and salad. Like, you got to make sure you have that fat, because your body requires fat to function. Your hormones need fat. If you don't make cholesterol, guys, you're not making any hormones. And then the last thing I want to talk to you, we talked a little bit about probiotics, but I do want to tell you about one product that I absolutely love. in water away from food. And I'll just put the little link here. Microbiome. Here we go. Okay, so I put Mega Mucosa, and it's this product right here. I don't know if you guys can see that. There we go. So Mega Mucosa. It's from a company called Microbiome Labs. This stuff is freaking amazing. Really, really great for a leaky gut. So this is always my go-to. I would suggest doing 1 scoop to start. You can actually do up to 2 scoops if you wanted to in food. Away from food, I should say. About an hour away from food, just once daily. That's it. And it doesn't matter what time of day. It is quite sweet. So just a big heads up about that. Some people don't like the taste of it because it's really sweet. I don't mind it. Maybe it's because I have a sweet tooth. But sometimes I'll put it in like a whole liter of water and I will drink that. But I actually quite like the taste of it. So I do this once a day. I do 2 scoops of that, and I freaking love this. But what this is, it's serum immunoglobulin. I know it's a really complicated long name, but it is fantastic. I'll just read to you here. It's the first complete mucosal support supplement of its kind, formulated with key amino acids to support a healthy mucosal barrier. So the mucosal layer of your small intestine. It contains dairy-free immunoglobulins clinically shown. Again, this is a company, Microbiome is the same company as the Mega Mucosa. But it's shown to support microbial diversity and a healthier barrier function. So to me, this is a really big deal when it comes to thyroid health. So they don't sponsor me, just so that you know. And just want to let you guys know that I'm not sponsored by them. It's not why I'm talking about them. I'm talking about them because it's a good fucking product. I use it a lot in practice. I use it personally, and I think it's an amazing, amazing product. So this is definitely like a non-negotiable for me. So I wanted to make sure that I provided some tools, lifestyle, food, supplemental, which we talked a couple like the probiotic and my favorite leaky gut formula. We talked about co-infections. We talked about EMFs and so much more. So guys, I really hope that you enjoyed this live stream. I hope that it was informative for you. I hope that you can either, number one, grab your spot to my masterclass, which is my thyroid masterclass. There are bonuses when you check out that masterclass. So I would really highly suggest that you go and view it because if you like the information that you're hearing from this broadcast, you are going to really enjoy the masterclass because I cover a lot of what I spoke about here, but so much more. And I give you a lot more tools that you can start to implement right away, okay? And if you're like, Melissa, I'm ready for Sexy Lady Balls. I'm ready to do this right away. Click on the link on the bio there. I also put the link for Sexy Lady Balls. It's a phenomenal program. It's also in the description of this live stream video. But it is a great freaking program. It is chock full of information. There's so much support. There's so much access to me. You're going to see this mug a lot in there because I'm there literally every single day doing these friendly check-ins. I talk a lot about mindset. It's a safe space for women because one of the things that I will tell you about having a thyroid issue, struggling with autoimmunity, is sometimes it feels so isolating because no one truly understands what it is that you're going through unless it's you. And I'm pretty sure that people who are watching in probably will attest to that, that they feel that they're alone in this and they feel frustrated and they feel confused and they don't know what to do and they're tired of feeling tired and they're tired of feeling like shit and they're tired of losing hair and not having the energy for the things that they once really enjoyed. And I absolutely can empathize with so much of that, which is the reason why that I created the membership. But if you're so not ready for that right now, just check out the actual masterclass because it has so much information that I think you guys will really like. So anyways, with all that said, get ready for more live streams. They're coming at you soon. I think I might actually be doing a bonus live stream coming up on Sunday, where I'm going to be talking about my top 3 essential oils that I absolutely love for thyroid function. So if you're around on Sunday evening, you could probably expect to see me once again. So that'll be like a bonus little live stream. But generally, I'll be doing a live stream on YouTube every other week on the weeks that I haven't published a YouTube video that's all polished, etc. And also check out my latest video on YouTube. I would love for you guys to give me a thumbs up if you like this video. Make sure that you subscribe to my YouTube channel and send me some love. All right, guys, thanks so much. Have yourself a beautiful evening. Bye.